Hey YouTube, I hope you guys were able to hear me. Yep, in the background that's Thomas Jefferson's home, Monticello, pronounced by Italian, meaning small mountain, little mountain. Monte's mountain, cello is little. But that's in the background, trying to get a good angle on it. As far as money goes, you'll see that on the back of today's nickel. And if you get a $2 bill printed from 1976, when the $2 bill was reprinted, it has Thomas Jefferson on the front, but on the back is the signing of the Declaration of Independence. If you get one of the original $2 bills that I have at home, which is it's called a silver certificate, that was the structure was on the back of the original $2 bill. Now, one thing I just want to make apparent is the docent and the tour guide. You know, if you start learning about history, you start learning different versions, and there is a depiction of the United States in 1801. And I talked to the docent after the tour, and she said in 1801 there were 16 states. I think she said 16 or 18. So that's 1801. Now, the War of 1812, 12 years later, when Francis Scott Key writes what is now known as the national anthem, the year was 1814 when Francis Scott Key wrote that, and the war was called the War of 1812. That's when it started. Now, the flag that was flying over Fort McHenry had 15 stars and 15 stripes. So I just asked her, how do we have a map depicting 16 states in the year of 1801, and 13 years later, in the year of 1814, the flag comes down and it's 15 stars and 15 stripes. It's the only flag we've ever had that had more than 13 stripes. And so we kind of talked back and forth, and I said, you know, we didn't add a 16, 17, 18. We didn't add stars at that moment, because we would add a star to the flag on the 4th of July. So state is admitted, a territory gets admitted into statehood April 1st. They would have to wait till July 4th to actually add that star to the flag. So, and I think there was one time when they were adding them January 1st. But per argument's sake, and what I'm saying is, you know, cross-reference history books, cross-reference me. And if I'm just doing a YouTube, so if there's something that sounds odd, don't take my word for it. But I guarantee you, if you look at the War of 1812, that's a 15 star and 15 stripe flag, and you can call the people at Fort McHenry, they'll confirm that, and so will the history books. My challenge now is to look up at 1801 and see what states were in fact admitted into statehood. Now, I believe the Louisiana Purchase was done around that time, but it wouldn't constitute being the 16th state until it got statehood. So anyways, that's just one thing. These people are very articulate, very informative, but if there's something you question, feel free to question them. They'll be happy to have the conversation, and feel free to look it up yourself. Now, one other thing I want to say about this tour, so if you're active duty military, which I am not anymore, but active duty military gets in for free. Everyone else pays $29 like I did today. Welcome to the retirement world. And you can save $3 if you do it online. I think 5 and under is free. So another question came up, the question about our current attitude on slavery, because I'm going on the slave tour. Actually, that's what they call it. And somebody asked the question, is this property and his Jefferson's habit, is that in contention with any government's policies now or activist groups? They are wanting to remove statues of Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis. So are we singling out people, historical figures that fought for the South? Were they fighting to keep slavery around, or were they just trying to exercise the extent of the Constitution and separate from the United States? Was the South pretty much doing what we did during the Revolutionary War, wanting its independence and way of life? Would there still be slavery today if, in fact, the South would have got what they wanted without war starting? If the South got what they wanted and were able to separate, can we conceive that there would be slaves today? Is that what we mean? I'm trying to be very neutral. I try to keep my videos very non-political, non-religious, non-polarized. I'm just for some critical thinking, some thought-provoking. What are we saying as a nation when we acknowledge some people for an ideology and a philosophy that we don't agree with, because they were correlated with political figures, historical military figures from the South, where we have the signer, the composer, the author of the Declaration of Independence, and was a slave owner. We're all people that fought for the North, anti-slavery. We're all people that fought for the South, pro-slavery. So it's an interesting topic to think about, and think about why we have history books, why we study history, what do we want to remove from history, and what do we want to preserve. I like to think of history as a foundation to learn from our mistakes, to learn from our successes, and try to make less of those mistakes and more of those successes as a foundation. I do not believe in looking at history as an anchor to keep us from going forward. I personally believe that I can very easily use it as an anchor if I dig and dig and dig deeper to what historical, political, and military figures should be removed from public view or history, because you could attack both northern and southern figures. You could even, this might be a little contentious with some people, but if you look historically, there were actually Afro-Americans and blacks that owned slaves themselves. So do we persecute them? There were Irish white slaves. Do we exalt them? So I really don't want to get too much more into that topic. It's just that here in Virginia is probably the pulse of that conversation and discontent. But I'm having a really good time here. It's beautiful weather. I'm going to take the other two tours here pretty quickly. I can probably give you some historical notes more on Monticello. I did pick up one of these little flyers, but if you want to know anything more about it, it's very interesting inside. All I can say is if you ever get into the Charlottesville area, you have to make this a stop. I was supposed to be at Fort Knox, Kentucky today, but once I found out this was so near, I came here. Like I said in an earlier video, Thomas Jefferson was the founder of the University of Virginia, which is right through those trees. Yeah, he could see it being built, and that was in 1819. He lived here. I think he was Secretary of State, Vice President, but he lived here before he took public office. He owed a lot of money before he died, so he had to sell it off. And then I think it came into this national preservation time in 1923. But once again, look this stuff up online if you're interested in visiting here. I would highly recommend it. So I'm going to go on. They have the garden tour, and then they had a slave tour. So I'm going to check those out before I miss that. Probably take some more still shots. Going to wrap this up and then hopefully get down to Scranton, where Woodrow Wilson's library is. Now, Woodrow Wilson's library isn't considered one of the presidential libraries because that portion, that institution of presidential libraries was not really founded when he had his. So you may not see it on the list, but I'll get more into detail of that when I get down there. Okay, I'm not sure how long this one went. Hope you all found it informative. This is beautiful property. Oh, no photography, no filming, no pictures inside. Oh, this is a pretty interesting topic. We were just told that this building behind me, this little out structure, which is no bigger than a two-car garage, is where he and his wife lived when that was being built. So that was an interesting thing to note. And for cemetery, he built another one on, where are you? I think I passed it. There it is. There's the other one. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to walk around a little bit more. Like, subscribe. I'll be on the road for 9 more days, hoping to hit some more interesting sites. Take care. Bye-bye.